What is up, guys? Rick Hackus here, and this is what I believe was the best gun that I got in the Division closed beta. And with the Division open beta finally here, this is definitely a gun that you guys should keep an eye out for. Now, I want to say that this gun, I again think that is overall probably the best gun that I got in the Division closed beta, not counting the high-end weapons. If I was, probably the high-end exotic Caduceus would be a little better, but this is just the best gun that I found throughout the loot system. I'm not claiming that I got every single gun in the game, but this gun consistently surpassed my expectations both against NPCs and against other players in the Dark Zone. And that gun is the classic M1A Marksman's Rifle. Now, first things first, why exactly have I gone with a Marksman's Rifle for the best gun in the beta? Well, I simply think that during the beta, I found myself in a lot of long-range encounters, way more than I thought I initially would. And yes, I was always rocking an assault rifle or an SMG, but I would always find myself really craving and really needing to have that Marksman's Rifle on backup. In the Dark Zone, there was a lot of occasions where people would try to snipe you from a long ways away. And if you didn't have a Marksman's Rifle in order to counter-snipe them, you could be in a lot of trouble. And notice I said that I rocked an assault rifle or an SMG as a primary, and I think that's a key factor. Those guns are kind of interchangeable. If you find a really good SMG like an MP7, you can totally rock that as a primary, but you can also find a really good assault rifle and rock that as a primary instead. There's a couple of different gun types that can function in those closer medium ranges that a primary weapon should. However, there really isn't a replacement to a Marksman's Rifle. No other gun type can reach out as far as Marksman's Rifles can, and like I said, you end up in a lot of long-range engagements. Way more long-range engagements I found than close-range engagements that might require a shotgun. In fact, shotguns are pretty much only utilized, for me at least, against NPCs in single player. It really wasn't worth it charging up to someone in the Dark Zone and trying to shotgun them to death. It was much more useful simply taking a cautious approach and engaging them from a long ways away. And the light machine guns I found simply had too much recoil for my taste. So why am I picking a Marksman's Rifle? Well, again, it's because you're in so many long-range scenarios. No, I am not saying run the double Marksman's Rifle combo in the beta. You should definitely run something like an assault rifle or an SMG as your primary, but I always found myself relying on those Marksman Rifles in the secondary category, no matter which fight or which area I was in. So now let's get more specific. Why the classic M1A? Well, let's look at its competition. Firstly, there's the Military Scar H. Now this is another very effective Marksman's Rifle, but as you can see from the stats, it does less damage and it shoots slower. The main benefit comes with a massive 20-round magazine, which is an advantage over the classic M1A's native 10-round magazine. However, magazine size really isn't too concerning to me, especially when I'm shooting faster and doing more damage. Now let's compare it to its main competitor. This gun, I often heard being called one of the best guns in the game. People were constantly saying, hey, do you have one of these? I really love one of these. But it's one of those guns that I assure you, the people who are saying this was good didn't have a good classic M1A. Now, its other competitor, like I've said, is the classic M44 Carbine. This thing is a bolt-action, essentially sniper rifle, but still in the Marksman's Rifle category in the Division. This gun will do a lot more damage than the classic M1A. In fact, it'll do pretty much double the headshot damage. So why am I not picking that? Why am I not going with that as the best gun in the game? Well, simply because, let's look at the rate of fire, 55, whereas compared to the classic M1A's 300. So yes, you're doing double the damage for a headshot. Don't get me wrong, if you get a good classic M44, you can by all means run it. It's a fantastic gun. I had one, I ran one, it was good. However, if you're trying to be competitive and if you're trying to rock the best of the best, I would definitely give up doing twice the damage to instead do 6 times the fire rate. And that's the key, and that's what makes me really like the classic M1A. It is shooting, it is putting forth so much more damage per second. The damage output of the classic M1A is massively more than the M44 Carbine, and that's why the M1A, I think, is a superior marksman's rifle and therefore the most superior gun in the division. Now, with that being said, the loot system in the division is extremely diverse, and I would urge you guys to try out a bunch of different guns and see which ones you feel most comfortable with. However, for me, especially in the dark zone, the classic M1A was the gun that I rocked pretty much every time and I relied on to get me out of a lot of sticky situations. So if you're lucky enough to get a classic M1A, you may be wondering, well, what attachments do I put on it? Well, most of the attachments are essentially up to you. The few that I would really recommend is, 1, for magazine size, you don't really need a massive increase in your magazine size. 10 rounds in a magazine is more than enough to handle a lot of different situations. So, in the division, magazines will sometimes come with a magazine size increase, but sometimes you can find the magazine attachments that just have damage increasing and rate of fire increasing properties. You might want to put one of these on instead, especially if you can find one that increases the damage. Rate of fire isn't necessarily as important, but if you can find a magazine increase with damage, definitely put that on because you want your initial damage to be as high as possible because you're trying to kill enemies in as few shots as possible. The one other attachment I would definitely recommend is a long-range optic. I had a lot of blue optics I eventually looted by the end of the beta, and I even bought a couple of purple optics, but I was still running a white 12x scope on my classic M1A because that increase to the magnification was so important in engaging enemies at longer ranges. I feel that if you put a 4x ACOG sight or anything below that zoom on this gun, it's simply not going to be as effective at the ranges that it can be. Put a 12x sight on and keep it on. Now that's gonna wrap up the video. If you enjoyed and if you found it helpful, please remember to help me out by simply rating or sharing this video. If you want to see more Division content, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me, the best way is to follow me on Twitter. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can follow as well. Again, hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day. Now, the Caduceus is one of 2 high-end weapons available in the beta. High-end weapons are essentially the Division's version of exotic weapons from Destiny or legendary weapons from Borderlands. They are the best top-tier unique weapons available in the game. Now, how do you get your hands on the Caduceus?